and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to call these fellow peers and leaders to the stage, the 21 leaders who are leading this movement and national advisory boards in 21 countries and the EU. Please come on stage with me. In front of your flags. Good. It's looking good, right? Last year, I believe, in Chicago, we had 17. We are now 22. I don't know what's going to happen in Chile. So I'm now going to invite all of these leaders to share with you a concrete example of the success of their work and how they see the future. Each one will have a short amount of time, approximately 30 seconds, to share a success story from their National Advisory Board from the past year and their commitment for their work in the year to come. Please get our audience excited by very short statements. Geeta, you're our host, and you're in the middle. I'm going to start with you. We've heard a lot about the Indian NAB successes. What is the one thing that we should remember? And what is the one thing that India is committing for next year?
So if I can quote Amit on that, getting $2.5 trillion of assets under management in one room is, I think, a success. And thanks. And that's a lot of effort that has been put by the GSG and the IIC team together. I think launching initiatives on outcome funds and debt funds along with the GSG has again been another great example of success in the year. But I would say most importantly, the fact that impact investors, and the numbers are still trickling in, but that has grown by 25%, as well as the reach and the impact has grown. I mean, those are big successes. And I would say if we keep one target for us for next year is that, again, along with the GSG, if we can get 1% of that $2.5 trillion into India impact investing, that would be a significant achievement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hear that there's a lot happening in Europe, and because I can pick who I want, I pick you, Cyril. Can you share, Cyril, can you share what's happening in France?
Well, last year I reported that France had the first social impact bond launched. This year I can report that we have 6 social impact bonds that have been launched. So I think this is a great success of the French NAB. And for this year and probably next year, the French government has launched a major initiative called French Impact. You know, there's the French tech, so now there's the French impact, and the NAB is strongly supporting the initiative of the government that have many pillars, and it's very ambitious.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Cyril. How about Portugal? Portugal is also a very vibrant country in terms of impact investment. Antonio.
Thank you, Cristina. So in Portugal, we're very proud that the seeds we've been planting since 2013 have come to fruition last year, with the launch of 3 new SIBs. We have 10 other SIBs on the pipeline for the year to come. Last year, we launched a unit cost database called One Value that is government approved. And I'm also very happy that we've published a progress report, which is usually something you say you'll do, but you end up not doing. And for next year, we are committed to work with the Portuguese government so that the government allocates 10% of social services using outcome-based contracting and try to transform Portugal an European hub for tech for impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Martin, what about Germany?
Thank you. Well, I could continue to talk about the outcomes funds that have been piloted in Germany, and there have been 2 outcomes funds, which has been mentioned by Ronald 2 days ago. But apart from that, I think we are in a situation which is a bit different from one or the other countries that are sitting here. In Germany, what we do is reflecting very much how our society is working in general. It's a lot about a cooperative approach. So that means we have been working hard in the past 1.5 years to bring together a broad coalition of about 50 to 60 organizations. And 2 weeks ago we met, and I think there was a lot of commitment, and now we want to, looking forward, put into work what we have thought out as a strategy. So I'm quite optimistic. It takes a little longer in our country sometimes, but once we get the structure in place, I think we get going pretty fast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there seems to be a trend around outcome payments and SIBs. Mika, would you like to share some of your work in Finland?
Dear colleagues, first I have to say that unfortunately Mr. Henrik Kronstein, our NAB chair, was not able to attend to this great event, but he sends his best regards to all of you, and I have about 2 hours summary about our activities. Is it okay if I read the message as a whole? Or do I have to?
You can make it short.
Make it short. Okay, thank you. During last 12 months, we have been focused very much on social impact bonds, as it has been mentioned already that we have 6 social impact bonds at the moment in Finland under the work, and then 1 environmental impact bond. And during next 12 and more months, we are going to do our best to convince all EU member states to implement the idea of outcome-based contracting and strengthen the idea of outcome-based approach. And we think that by doing that, we can really combine the private and public capital more effective way than ever before.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Giovanna, Italy has been also very pioneering in many of these aspects.
No, not pioneer, but one thing I want to share, maybe the most important thing, is that in the last months, I think our greatest achievement was that people and public debate around impact investment is not an esoteric issue. And the Italian NAB has attracted, and impact conversation has attracted many new stakeholders, pension funds, the Italian Cassa Depositi Prestiti, the public investors, and a lot of social enterprises that were looking at us with some suspicion originally. So for me, that is really the best achievement. Naturally, we did manage to get a small outcome fund approved by the government last year. Let me say, let's keep fingers crossed that the new government keeps it on going. I have, some fears about it, but with your help and with this movement help, we're going to defend this result. And for the future, well, something a little bit out of the box. I feel that we need to connect. A lot has been done in these 2 fabulous days, but we really need to connect more with the theoretical debate around social justice. I think this is something we really need to do, and this is something on which the Italian NAB is going to work. And obviously the Italian NAB feels very much engaged with the European NABs. So I'm talking about Italy, but I really feel a European identity here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Talking about Europe, the UK is still in Europe.
For the time being, yes.
Harvey, would you like to share a couple of words about the UK's achievements?
Delighted. Well, the last year saw the UK NAB publish a landmark report which was called The Rise of Impact, which I know many of you will have seen. If you haven't seen it, can I be so bold as to suggest that you should track it down? It resulted in, amongst other things, a meeting with the Prime Minister and senior cabinet members, which given Brexit was a very significant accomplishment. Ronnie was with us at that meeting, and in turn that has resulted in a sort of a cross-government momentum and mandate to look at impact investing initiatives. So going forward, we would very much like to continue to work with government to see that impact is more wholly embedded into that 250 billion plus annual procurement spend of the UK government. And on the other side, we want to continue to support an important initiative that has been running, chaired by Elizabeth Corley in the UK, which is around democratizing access to impact investments, making them more available to individuals who would wish to invest in them. So those will be the twin tracks of our focus going forward.
Thank you very much. Uli, I'm now coming to you. What's the EU's vision on all of this?
Well, I don't feel particularly entitled to speak for Europe. The voices you have heard on this stage, and there are more voices out there that are building their impact investing activities in the countries and will be on stage next year, hopefully here, or in Santiago. I think what I would like to mention is that at the EU Advisory Board that comprises the European Investment Bank, the European Commission, and the EIF for the time being, we are merely the fuel to support the initiatives that are taking place in individual countries. We have brought over the last year 3 new products in support of social entrepreneurship and social innovation to the market. And as we speak, we are in the midst of the discussion of what the social pillar of the European Union will look like for the programming period 2021-2027. As you all are aware, it's not the easiest time politically for Europe, nor for the globe. And I'm very pleased that the European Union has taken up the challenge of making social innovation and social entrepreneurship the glue for the European Union going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very important. Yaron, I'm going to continue with you. I think the audience would be very interested in hearing about the advancements in Israel.
So, last year in Israel we had 2 big achievements. The first one is really the establishment and the launch of Bridges Ventures in Israel that made their first closing at $50 million, and that's a big step. And the second one is the Commissioner on Capital Markets that issued a directive to all institutional investors, provident funds, pension funds, and insurance companies that they have to disclose whether they invest in impact or ESG investments. For the future, next year, we have an ambitious 4 or 5 social impact bonds to launch. We're going to further strengthen the NAB. And I said it last year, and it wasn't completed. I hope we will complete it in the next year to establish a wholesaler fund following the steps of this working group that did a great job, and Gila from my team was a member of it. And last thing, since 2019 is taken and 2020 is taken, maybe we can reflect on tipping point 2020 at 2021 in Tel Aviv.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Very exciting. Thank you. Speaking of which, let's move to Latin America. Chile will be our host next year. So Angelica, it would be lovely to hear from you. You know, what's been the achievements?
I think you don't have the latest news, because we're not having a Chilean summit next year. We're going to have a LATAM summit next year, which is quite different.
True.
The greatest achievement, I need to thank the GSG for that, is that you transformed me into a complete passive woman into a runner. Same thing you did with the whole NAB. And we've been running all year long. We run to get key measures into the new administration program, which is basically putting the government in our pocket. Not that much, but more or less. We run to raise acknowledgement and awareness all over our society. And calculations have been made that, at least in the press, we raised 800% from the previous year what was told about impact investing. We transformed an issue that was quite complicated and quite unknown into an issue that is trendy now. We pushed, and we are very good at pushing. I don't know if Amit can support me on this, but we are really good at pushing. And we pushed the government to have the first 2 SIPs, not because we are super fond of outcomes, of outcome funds or outcome-based instrument, but they provide the evidence we need to build the market. So fortunately, we are about to launch the first 2 SIPs in Chile before the year end. And having the summit in Santiago is twofolded. Our goal is to have you all there, and I hope you not only visit Chile, but also take a time to visit, I would take a month actually, to visit all of LATAM. And, but it's the main reason to hold it in Chile and to put this elephant on our shoulders is to push more and more the government, so to make of Chile a place where everyone can start, but not end a long journey for impact investment all over LATAM.
Awesome, thank you. So you've heard, book your flights now. Thank you, Angelica. I think, yeah, Brazil would be a great, great next story. Thank you, Beto.
Okay. The key milestone last year was the launch of the National Strategy for Impact Investment in Brazil. This is a state policy. It has a 10 years mandate to implement the actions. It involves like over 50 players in both public and private civil society players. And it was described by the recent report released by the UK government and the World Economic Forum as a benchmark in terms of policy making. So, well done. And the challenge, actually a stress test, is going to keep the momentum next year with the national strategy, because we have a new government next year, and the one that is leading is going to be quite challenging for us. But anyway, we can overcome this.
As for Bangladesh, this has been a long climb up to the summit. About 10 months we worked to create NAB. And happily, the NAB has been created, and creation itself is our achievement, if you say. Because we have NAB was created last September. So having said that, one of the decisions was to apply by the NAB for this DSG summit and this membership, and the other was to create form a national action plan. So we are working, we go home and work on that, and we have seen the catalyzing of impact investment ecosystem. We'll take a lot of notes from there. I was in one of the discussion meeting. So this is good. And as for Bangladesh, it is not NAB, but the organization that I come from, this Build Bangladesh. We have had a $100 million UN partnered fund called a Build Bangladesh UN SDG Impact Fund that has been launched, and that was launched in New York. We were there, and it was launched by the Prime Minister of the country. So that gives a lot of support. We have had some Chinese investors who will anchor the money, the first 10%. So that way we are going ahead, and with this networking that we have, we want to share your experience and come out as much as possible. And good thing is that when I came here, I did not see much of, like many countries don't have government membership there, but in our country it is led by the government. The finance ministry's finance secretary leads it. I was myself planning secretary, and after retirement, when we came, I went and saw the finance secretary and told him, give the leadership. So he had it cleared from his minister, and now he leads for next 2 years. He will be the leader of our NAB. We have the regulators, the central bank. We have the Securities and Exchange Commission with us. We have the Bangladesh Investment Development Authority with us. Then the Women Chamber of Commerce. We have academics. We have British Council. We have also DFID. We have IFC, ADB. So all these government, regulators, DFIs, academics makes a very good group. And now question is, we made a very good group. Hopefully we can work out together and take
Absolutely.
it forward. And
Yes.
a lot of support we may be needing from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Thank you. Very inspirational.
And thank you for receiving us with open arms, everybody.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move to Australia. The Australian National Advisory Board has been extremely...
Can I take a second? Because Rosemary has been with us. She has been hugely supporting us. Without Rosemary and Australian support, we would not be here today, to be very frank. And
You
we
stole
have
my
been supporting.
transition.
And another thing that I must acknowledge is what Sir Ronald termed it as the vanguard, the NABs being the vanguard of impact investment. We received huge support from Amit. We have received a lot of support from UNDP, and we are working together. So I must acknowledge that. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you. Rosemary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's our privilege to have worked with a number of countries in the region, and we're delighted to just delighted to welcome additional countries into this movement. We have seen in Australia that the growth in impact investment, which our benchmarking we started a few years ago tells us has grown fourfold since the middle of 2015, has had a much broader reverberation, including now serious attention from some of the actors who can help us to drive scale, including the pension funds, and despite our own version of political machinations, the government, including announcement of a partnership with the Australian National Advisory Board and Impact Investing Australia to drive the market to scale. And we've seen particular effort from the Department of Foreign Affairs in terms of development investment, which has really been having an influence well beyond Australia. For next year, we will be navigating both federal and state elections to make sure this stays firmly on the political agenda, including continuing to prosecute the case for the wholesaler. It's a huge testament to the team that they've kept commitments from major banks to that initiative, notwithstanding that there's been a Banking Royal Commission going on. We will also be launching next month the next iteration of a blueprint to take the market forward based on feedback from the field, that we will be focusing very much on distributed leadership and collective action and refreshing the National Advisory Board for what's needed for the next wave of action. And we hope to be active in continuing to join the dots and to build this throughout the Asian region.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's transition back to Latin America. There's one or two, actually, national advisory boards left. There is a double one, Argentina and Uruguay. So I'd love to hear a little bit from maybe that end of the room. Carmen, can you share a little bit about Uruguay?
About Uruguay. Well, in 1 year, we were able to convince the National Agency of Innovation to invest in the first regional impact investment fund that was launched in Argentina. So we have an investment there. And also we were able to develop in all 4 universities in the country courses around social impact, around also impact investment, and different events. And also we are drafting new laws and regulations around it. So we are very happy with the achievements we have right now. For next year, we hope we start working on a social impact bond. And it is a challenge we have in regards that next year is election year for Uruguay, but it's also an opportunity because we are pushing all the candidates to include this in their agenda.
Thanks, thanks. Political challenges seem to be a shared topic among some countries. Alejandro.
Okay, shall I?
For Argentina, please.
Well, first of all, Argentina is really an acid test to the whole impact investment theory, because actually I haven't heard anyone in the room suggesting how we should run a central bank. And as a matter of fact, that is what we need most, because we are right now in a recurrent financial crisis in Argentina, and that's That's basically sent probably 15% of the population into poverty, not out of poverty. So this is just to put a bit of context, okay? Within this context, Argentina is hosting the next G20 meeting in a couple of months, at the end of November. And within that process, the GSG, and in particularly I look at Amit and his team, supported the local NAB immensely to integrate many of the activities of the local NAB into the conversation with the government. We held a series of meetings in Buenos Aires at the end of July, which were very important. In that event, we launched the initiative of the Latin American Impact Fund of Funds locally. And that helped us also accelerate some of the conversations that we've been having with the government on a number of issues that are quite innovative. What Sebastian mentioned the first day about this new slum integration legislation is it's going to be a great piece of legislation. Hopefully, it will be passed tomorrow. And that will allow us to actually put together a very interesting impact investing products. Amit visited one of the sites that we are actually working on, and we believe that there is a huge potential there. So hopefully we'll get out of the financial crisis relatively soon, and we'll move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving to Mexico, what's been happening in Mexico, Rodrigo?
Yeah, well, yes, there are probably lots of things going on, but I would say that three main things we achieved last year. It's the first and most important is that we have more than 60 members in our National Advisory Board, all the way from the National Development Bank, the new stock market. We have Citibank, we have corporates, we have accelerators, funds. So, and that's the most important thing, that it's not just members, it's a very dynamic membership. We have committees, they are working together, we're sharing experiences, and that's amazing, just see how we're working the whole ecosystem together. The second thing is that we're going to publish next week our first research piece. We did it together with EY and IPADE, which is the main business school. And this research is going to help us to look forward for where we targeting our efforts as a NAF. Like each individual member is doing something, but this paper is going to help us to unify our efforts and to be very focused on what we're trying to achieve in short, medium, and long term in terms of in Mexico. It's a good timing because in December we're going to have a new president. So we are now already working, doing a little bit of lobbying to try to work with the transition team of the new government. So we believe it's a very good timing to have this dynamic group and this research piece. And the third thing that happened is that 6 years ago we approached the Mexican Fund of Funds, which is part of the Development Bank, to ask to convince them to invest in our fund. And I remember 6 years ago, we were avoiding anything related to impact, to social. We were just trying to mention more like the industries, but they were very skeptic about impact investing. I would say thanks to the efforts of all the people working in the ecosystem, all the funds that are performing probably better than traditional funds. Now they just announced that they are launching a fund of funds for Mexico. It's $150 million. They're going to start investing in a couple of months. They got money from corporate pension funds and also public pension funds, so which is a great announcement. I mean, it's just 6 years ago we were scared about talking about impact. Now the same guys are spearheading the industry with impact fund of funds.
Thank you. That's quite exciting indeed. So next to you, Japan. Okay. We had Argentina as the host of the G20 this year. What's going to happen in Japan?
Yeah, thank you so much. Firstly, I'd like to share the progress. One of the biggest challenges for us is to set up a new wholesaler with dormant bank account. The last year in this summit in Chicago, on this stage, I reported that we enacted the law to unlock the dormant bank account in Japan. And now I'm very happy to report to you that within this year, new wholesaler will be designated. From next year, from January, the operation will start. So I'm very happy to be this stage. And one thing I would like to share is that this community is great. Without having this community, we could not make a good wholesaler. Especially, I would like to say thank you to the working group for impact investment wholesaler, headed by Cliff, and together with the team here. Without having knowledge sharing from them, it's impossible. Especially, market development is really key. In Japan's case, in the law, the market development was not stipulated in the law, but thanks to the input, we could include the market development piece in the strategy. So I think that this GSG community has already made a great difference in the growth of the social impact investment in Japan already. And one more thing in front of us is the G20. And the global political will is really important to promote impact investment. And we're going to host G20 in Osaka next June. And I think followed by the Argentina. And the G7 will be held in France in August. And what we are looking at in the top leaders' declaration, we would like to stipulate the importance of impact investment. So in July, we set up a working group for G20 in Japan. It's a great team. And we have been discussing with the governmental officials. They are basically positive. But in order to really make it happen, I need all of your support, working together to advocate the government to actually stipulate the sentence on the top message, leaders' declaration. I think that it's not easy process, of course, but we must do, and we can do, and we will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. South Korea. South Korea has joined the GSG in February. The NAB was launched in February. What has been happening? What were the achievements? And what does the future look like in South Korea?
Well, we established our NAB February of this year. So it's been 8 months or so. And it was extreme honor for us to be able to have Sir Ronald and Christina and Jess Jim together with 13 other countries in the inauguration conference in February. And we started with 56 members, one of the largest member group. And accomplishment-wise, we are very lucky to be able to convince the government people so that the president announced a social finance policy in February 9th of this year that includes the creation of wholesale fund and also fund of funds, impact fund of funds. And we were able to then move forward, and we had this task force for wholesaler, and the mission of task force is ending at the end of this month. We are going to have a non-profit organization which will carry out the wholesale function that will be launched by the end of it. And the wholesaler will have 50 million capital, more than half to be provided from private sector. The remainder will be covered by government. So that's the structure. And the fund of funds will come from Ministry of Finance and Ministry of SMEs. And total, they will contribute 120 million per annum. So that's an accomplishment in terms of numbers. And the fund of funds have already issued first rounds of GP, and they start investing, and wholesaler will start investing starting from next year. And more on qualitative accomplishment, I would say is that out of 56 members, 23 members have all went out for a workshop, overnight workshop together to a suburban villa. And they compete against each other for getting money from different sources. And they talk about impact investment, but their intention to build impact ecosystem together as a collection of people was never there. So there was the first attempt to get together of those people to have some common direction that we have to build these things together. That I would say it was an important accomplishment as chair of the NAB. What will happen next year? We are going to have another thrilling ride. First of all, we have to work with Congress to pass two laws. One about utilizing dormant account money towards a wholesaler. We already have a dormant account law which will avail this dormant account money to public users, but it was not specified as a use for wholesaler. So we are making that revision of the law. That has to be done next year, and that will add up the AUM of our wholesalers substantially. Second is that we have SIBs projects going on, but many of SIBs have to be accommodated by municipal governments by changing their own policies, rather than they have their legal basis to do it on a national level. So we are going to push forward this legislation. So after that, we'll have many more of SIBs coming. And finally, I want to see North Korea as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for impact investment. Yeah. Thank you. And I know there are optimisms and there are skepticisms, but I'm on very optimistic front. And when I see you in Chile, you will need to buy me some Chile wine for betting on the right side. I'm very optimistic.
Thank you.
And we, as a NAB Korea, we want to prepare impact investment possibilities, working with the Korean government and other allies, so that we lay grounds beforehand, before other things happen. And so we want to prepare for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You heard him. Let's make history. Let's fly over to Canada. Adam, would you like to share about the ecosystem in Canada?
In Chicago last year, I said Canada's priorities are pretty simple. We're going to look at pursuing a wholesaler as well as an outcome fund. And I'm happy to report that we've made significant progress on the wholesaler front, thanks in part to the GSG and those that have been pioneering the wholesaler funds. You let us look under the hood of your operations and the DNA of how you put them together. And we wrote the working paper report. We used Cliff and Felipe Almeida from Portugal to come and charm our very senior public officials, and they impressed. And so we're waiting to see the outcome of a proposal to create a wholesale fund in Canada. In parallel, our Canadian government undertook a very comprehensive strategy to look at how to develop the social innovation and social finance space, produced 12 recommendations, public recommendations, so those that are interested in creating a strategy for your country, I suggest you take a look at this public report. The grass is always greener in Canada, and it might offer some help for your pursuits. So in 1 or 2 years, I'm hoping that Canada can report a couple or several $1 billion on, Sir Ronald, your $30 trillion ambitious goal. and the wholesaler will be one way in which we do that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So I think these were some of the people that you saw last year. Let's hear from the newest countries that have joined last month. You've heard from Bangladesh. I would like to ask David from New Zealand to share a bit with us about your plans for New Zealand.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's great to be here for New Zealand. One of the most encouraging things in the last year is that we've seen 6 or 7 impact funds set up in New Zealand already. They're coming mostly locally, some nationally, relatively small on a GSG perspective, but terrifically encouraging to see a bottom-up development from a country that has a strong donation culture and wants to diversify. We seem to have accidentally acquired a wholesaler because the structure of the government's new green fund fulfills all the characteristics of crowding in private capital that many of the wholesalers in more advanced GSG countries do. So the action point for the NAB towards tipping point over the next year or so is to further bring in the financial institutions and investment managers who want to be involved in this, the corporates who want to be involved, to use the long-term investment horizon of our iwi and to harness that bottom-up grassroots movement with a top-down movement and develop our ecosystem across the whole spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So in our efforts to welcome more countries to build this global movement, we are extremely happy to have our first African country join the GSG. Welcome to South Africa. Elias, please share your thoughts for the future.
Thank you very much. I think it's appropriate to start off by saying we came, we saw, and we learned. When we came here, we had one mission in mind. And the mission was to place the African issues on the agenda. We're living with what we see as a higher purpose, a much bigger ambition to take the subject of impact investment to the level of the AU, the African Union, so that all African governments embrace impact as the key and the cornerstone of policy making on the continent. If there's any region that requires impact investing, it's Africa. And would like to see a complete change, a revolution across the continent, and a creation of what we would like to call a new Marshall Plan for Africa.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, Tracy, you kicked us off yesterday with the beautiful image of the aspen tree. I hope you were all in the room to be inspired by this incredible strength that you gave us with this image. I would like now to conclude this session with you and your views about the ecosystem in the US and elsewhere.
Thank you, Christina. Well, I speak on behalf of 2 fellow aspen keepers, our fabulous chair, Darren Walker, who is right next to Ronnie, as well as our fabulous executive director, Fran Siegel, who's not with us on this trip. To build on your critical point, I think having an enabling policy environment is a critical thing for our movement, especially in the United States. And we're excited to report 3 very exciting policy wins in the last year. The first one is the Opportunity Act, which will enable the $6 trillion of unrealized capital gains that are sitting on the sidelines, and to usher this capital into the most distressed communities across the United States. That's the first one. The second one is the first ever Pay for Success piece of legislation at the federal level, which is called the SIPRA, the Social Impact Partnership to Pay for Results Act, which is a very powerful set of incentives sitting at the federal level to enlist state and local government to do more Pay for Success impact bond projects. And then the third one, which was just signed into law a couple of days ago, will modernize the Development Finance Institution and give OPIC greater authority to do more. So it's just been an incredible and busy year. It's almost uncanny to think that in this political environment in the United States, a pretty divisive political environment in the United States, that we can have these policy wins. And it really signifies that the movement that we're in together is a set of issues and a set of ideas that transcends the political divide, that appeals across the political ideological spectrum, and is something that we should all be very proud of.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep on uploading. These are the leaders that are transforming the impact investment ecosystem around the world. I hope you are inspired by their actions, by their commitments into action, and that many other of you, and I see a couple of countries that might be inspired by this, to create new national advisory boards to advance our revolution around the world. Let's applaud them again. Thank you.